Morning, Bitcoiners. I hope you're doing well. I hope you had a great Easter. I sure did. Who could complain on a day like today, right? Hope everyone's doing well. The stupid thing where I don't get the messages is happening again. Good morning from a nondescript cornfield. We love nondescript cornfields. We love them. We love them. We've also got Lightning Vend in the comments saying, good morning from Minnesota. Hope you and your family had a great Easter. I sure did. Daniel in the house. Good morning. Christine, good morning. Bitcoin Deb, yep, one egg at a time. Happy Easter. Happy halving month. I hadn't thought of that yet, Bitcoin Deb. Thank you. I will likely be in America for the halving. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. That's what it looks like is going to be going on. Edwin, good morning. Hope everyone here had a great Easter. Indeed. NYC. Yeah, I had amazing NYC Easters in my life. Beaumatin, good morning, Bitcoiners. Come on, fake news. Come on, fake news. You're going to get the fake news. Good morning. Back in good old Montreal. So will I be, P-Man Van. I got just over 2 weeks left down here in the south. And I'm telling you, I'm starting to miss the weather. When I look in the backgrounds and people up north, I start to get jealous now. Now that it looks all Eastery and springish, I love it. I love it. I love it. It's my favorite weather. It's my favorite weather. Listening live, Bowtine Gradhog says, what a treat. April Fools to all Bitcoiners. April Fools, yeah. I am not going to be April Foolsing you today, guys. I promise. I promise. All right. Let's just acknowledge we got a major sunrise here on Easter Monday, April 1st. Some people call it April Fool's Day. But, you know, sun's up, so we're doing great. And guess what else is happening? Bitcoin's running. We're doing fine, everyone. Let's have a coffee and talk about what's new. Hammersaw says the flowers are coming. Yeah, but I know when the flowers are coming in Quebec. I time it for the Quebec, just the beginning of stuff. There's still nothing there. There's still snow in dirty snow piles from parking lots and stuff like that. That stuff I really dislike. Rumble's still not live. Nah. Really? Okay. I will look around to see what this Rumble thing is going on. Sometimes there's a bit of a lag with Rumble. It says it's broadcasting, though, so... No, it says I'm live on one of them anyway. And French Fry says, bring it. Drew says, hola peeps. Lance says, hope you had a fabulous Easter. If you celebrate that holiday, I sure do. Good morning, Nolan and team. Bring it on. Great. Thanks for coming, everyone, this morning. I have not checked the Bitcoin Magazine Rumble. Remember, this thing broadcasts on 4 channels in case you're new here. Number 1 is my personal Rumble. Number 2 is Bitcoin Magazine's Rumble. Number 3 would be my personal YouTube. And number 4, of course, is X. We love X. The mushrooms are coming, Hammersaw says. Yeah, they sure are. If you fooled us, would we know the difference? Probably not, but I will not. I promise you. John says, congratulations on the new book. Indeed, if you haven't seen it, everyone, we have published and shared the Bitcoiner's Guide to the U.S. 2024 elections. I think an even better orange pilling book than the NPC management one. So there you go. Have a look, everyone. Have a look. I think you'll like it. All right, what was I looking at? Oh, yeah, the Bitcoin Magazine. Just making sure everything's broadcasting, guys. This is the joys of live shows, right? Hi from Erie. Gonna have a total eclipse on April 8th. I think it's April 9th. Our city is going to be crazy. Yeah, I wish I would. That's another thing I'm really missing. I love the morel mushrooms. Have you partaken? Of course. My Hammersaw, my brother is actually a mushroom. What do they call them again? When you go around picking them, he sells them to all these nice restaurants in Montreal and also in the townships. He does chanterelles mostly, but morels, everything. He knows where to get them all in the townships and in Vermont. So I can't remember what the name of those people is, but he's one of them. It's a summer job. He's a teacher, so you get summers off, as a teacher. So that's what he does. Forage. He's a forager. Exactly. Thank you, Mudcast. I'm a little slow today. We haven't done it in 4 days, right? Thanks for your patience, everyone, while I got the book out. I really needed those mornings to craft, Yeah, he's a mushroom hunter. Yeah. His kids, it's Quebec college. but so that, it won't translate to Americans exactly, but his kids paid their way through college from their summer job just hanging out with him doing the mushroom thing, like just going through the woods. He does really well. He does really, really well. Yeah, I'll talk about that, Joseph Norwood. I'm happy to have shared the family pic on X. It's time to not hide our light under a bushel. I stayed away from X for years before Elon owned it, and was always very hesitant because of the damage that can be taken in this absolutely insane world that we live in. But it's time to just be ourselves, right? So that's why I was happy to do it. That was the first ever published picture of my wife and children. I bring them to the events and everything, but that's it. All right, you're not here for picture stuff. You're here to hear some fake news. What's the fakest news I can find? There's so much on a holiday weekend because they always bring the B team, right? So the B team is always working in the newsrooms for the holidays. It's like the whole summer season. So there's always so much, but some of it even already got outdated. So I cut it down a little bit. We don't have too much. All right, here we go. This one is from the Daily Mail, I think. This one's pretty good. Now, scientists suggest women avoid coffee while pregnant because of links to autism in their child. So everyone, I'm drinking some coffee. I don't know what it does to the sperm, but maybe I'm going to have some autistic kids because of all my coffee drinking. We'll see. This one's just kind of funny. It doesn't need any comment. This is from Fox. Politically incorrect sheriff tells citizens to shoot to kill home invaders to save taxpayers' money. So good. So good. This one's great. This is another one of those ones, the ones where you see Michael Malice and others telling you don't hate the fake news enough. Like even though you hate them, there's another level of hatred that you just haven't accessed because of how you haven't actually contemplated how awful they are. Listen to this headline from the Associated Press. Listen to this. It's too good. Who wouldn't like prices to start falling? Careful what you wish for, economists say. Economists, be careful, guys. Be careful. You don't want things to get cheaper. You don't want that. Speaking of things getting cheaper or more expensive, Bay Area fast food chains continue layoffs ahead of minimum wage increase. Why? How did that happen? What are we laying people off for? What's going on? This is from the Daily Mail again. The moment a Met police officer tells Jewish woman that swastikas need to be taken into context after she complained about the Nazi symbol being used in pro-Palestine march banners in London. But the thing around, there was a place where I lived in South Korea. So one of the times I lived in South Korea, I lived on the Nakdok Gang. Gang means river. Nakdok is just the name of the river, the Nakdok Gang. But if you're a history buff, you'll know that was the actual Busan perimeter. So it's as far as the north was able to push the south. If you see the war map or whatever of the Korean War in 1950, it starts with a blitz from the north, and they push the South Korean army before the Americans intervene. They push them right to Busan, and Busan is cut off from the mainland by a big river. So they were able to fortify that river. I literally lived on that river the first 8 or 9 months I lived in South Korea. And above that river, there's a bunch of mountains in the valley. There is a giant swastika, huge, like enormous. And I remember thinking, because the people there would say, oh, we don't think of it the same way, and it's Buddhist and whatever. But, it's always one of the things you think about when it comes to World War II, and a little historical, maybe fake news, who knows? Maybe, I'm completely wrong, but stuff I've been reading about from Robert Sepper and others about the history of the swastika. Very fascinating stuff. So I urge you to have a look at that stuff. So I urge you to take it into context. It's true. It's not just the Moscow Times. All right, this one's pretty funny. Okay, this one's pretty good. Hold on, which one should I get to first? Oh yeah, this one's great. So this comes from Jacobin. It's a communist newspaper. Here's what they say. Corporations are now exploring the use of dynamic pricing, the latest scheme to squeeze more money out of consumers without improving the service, otherwise known as happy hour. To the communists, they have to use this language to talk about early bird specials and happy hour. Corporations are now exploiting the use of dynamic pricing. Yeah. Like happy hour. Too good. All right, this was one of my favorite ones of the day. This came out over the weekend, and it's true. All right, this is the Washington Times, not the Washington Post, the Washington Times, writing, polar ice melt is changing Earth's rotation, messing with time itself. Everyone, check your Bitcoin miners. We got to upgrade. It's cold in the north. The Bitcoin is not going to work anymore. We're not going to be able to mine. Time is all fucked up. No more mining. Too good. All right, we got more. We're not done. We got plenty more. So normally I don't do this. This is just from a normal Twitter person from Ukraine. So this is not necessarily fake news, but it turns out there was a Marxism conference over the weekend on Easter in Australia. And I'm not going to add anything to it. I'm just going to tell you, and it's not a joke. I went and looked up her profile, and she looks consistently this. Here's what she actually writes, right? So no comment is going to be given. I'm just going to give it to you. Marxism conference over the Easter weekend. A big thank you to everyone who has made the connection. Ready for it? A big thank you to everyone who's made the connection between COVID-19, class, disability, long COVID, and poverty. Solidarity and mutual aid are important in this ongoing pandemic. Have you made the connection between COVID-19 and disability yet? I have. We have a normal Twitter person. All right, here's where things get really fun, okay? So, do I have one more before I get to the really fun Moscow time ones? So what I have here, I'm going to give you some Trump ones, but what I have in a minute is proof that we live in a simulation. I can actually prove it today. I'm going to prove it before we even get to our theme. I'm going to prove this is not real, okay? None of this stuff can be real. It's not possible, all right? Let's get started. So first, we get this from the Biden campaign, right? So their plan, Biden's latest campaign strategy, get under Trump's skin. So his plan, Biden's plan, is to get into a insult war with Donald Trump. That's his plan, okay, guys? That's the plan, all right? Here we go. Washington Post writes, Donald Trump invoked religion in a flurry of political grievances this weekend, including by attacking President Biden for acknowledging International Transgender Day of Visibility, which happened to fall on Easter Sunday, right? So remember, everyone, Trump invoked religion. Trump invoked religion. So here we go. Think of this as like a mini kids roller coaster. All right, it's a kids roller coaster, and at the end of it, you're going to say, "There's no way any of this is real. They can't be real. This can't be real." Okay, you know the fundraiser, the day Trump went to the funeral service for the police officer. Of course, the former Democrat presidents with Biden did a big fundraiser in New York. They called it a show of strength, a show of force. It was so amazing. Lizzo was there. Here's how MSNBC. Now, this is not a joke. I'm not going to give you any punchline, right? They're pushing a podcast here. They're pushing a podcast. Ready? Behind the scenes photo of Presidents Obama, Biden, and Clinton during the interview on the Smartless podcast. It's the Smartless podcast. They did great. Now we're getting more there. So remember I told you the Jon Stewart thing was going to be a hilarious fail. Like it was going to be the dumbest thing we ever saw, right? It was going to be like trying to bring back a athlete who's way past his prime, hasn't played in 20 years, and putting him on the field and expecting him to be as good as he was before, right? Not really going to happen. So here's what we know. First of all, now, I'm not making this up, guys, okay? This is really happening in our world, okay? So they thought when he came out with The Daily Show that it would be super funny to, or maybe not even super funny. Maybe it was just going to be what they would do to decorate the set. I don't know if you've seen the set decorations on The Daily Show. I don't know if you've seen what they did, but they decided to put the acronym for The Daily Show and just plaster it all over the set, right? So everywhere you look on the Jon Stewart set as he goes on, all right, it actually says this now. It says the acronym, right? The first initials of The Daily Show. So over the entire set, it now says TDS. It says TDS all over the set. It's not me doing this, guys. It's Jon Stewart. I can't help it. So they write TDS. It's all over the set now. So you've got Jon Stewart up there every day, or however often he does it, going on about stuff, right? So here's what happened. He went on last week about how Trump, even though the banks didn't lose money, he lied about something with the valuation of the house and all that. Well, here's what we know. Jon Stewart found to have overvalued his New York City home by 829% after labeling Trump's civil case not victimless. So the guy with the TDS on the TDS set went around and told everybody that Trump did a crime, and then within minutes, he was caught doing the exact same crime. The exact same crime. I can't make, it's not me. It can't be me. I'm not making it up. Now, it kind of reminds me also, and I saw this with, I've been saying for a long time that Biden is really the Craig Wright of presidents, that he's the Craig Wright of all the presidents, right? And we saw what happened last week with Craig Wright, of course, the fake Toshi, right? So last week, a judge just ripped Craig fake Toshi apart. And, that's kind of funny. It's kind of funny, right? It's kind of funny. And then the judge actually put a worldwide freezing order on Craig's assets, right? Also kind of funny. But it gets really funny. It gets Trump derangement syndrome Daily Show TDS funny. That it's not possible that we live in a like, it has to be for entertainment of someone. Someone's laughing at this stuff more than we are. Okay. So here's what Giacomo says about Craig Wright. If Craig Wright was not a broke shitcoin charlatan, now he could use Bitcoin to protect his assets from freezing. So the guy who went around for years saying I'm Satoshi gets his assets frozen, and because he doesn't have any Bitcoin, his assets are frozen. His assets are frozen. Thank you, simulation architect, for all of these really great coincidences. We're not done. There's more. There's more. There's more. It doesn't end, right? So imagine you got TDS, you got Biden going after Trump in an insult competition. And then all of this, remember what happened? All of this at the same time was that the original insult that Biden went with was broke Dawn. They were going to go with broke Dawn. Remember that? Remember 2 weeks ago, he was testing out his insults, right? He went with broke Dawn. And then on the same day that Trump had renegotiated his bond of $400 million down to 170, his company also went public, and he is now worth about $9 or $10 billion. So they went with broke Dawn 2 weeks ago, and now he's richer than Mark Cuban and all kinds of other people. So there's no way come on, the TDS and the house overvaluation, there's just no way. There's just no way. The simulation smiles on us. There's no way any of this can be real. There's no way. Right? Alan Watts says there is a reason why cosmic is often misspelled as comic. Because the universe is joking with us. Well, Hammersaw, I mean, that stupid Jon Stewart is up there looking like his brain is broken, like he's got TDS, and they actually share on the set. They now advertise it's the TDS show. It's the TDS. I don't make it up. I couldn't make this up, guys. I write science fiction, and I can't come up with this kind of stuff. This is beyond gold. It's beyond, right? Like, sub, and share, folks. This dude's Nostradamus. So So there you go. TDS. He's got some major TDS. All right. So here's a pretty interesting thing I saw this week. It came from Mike Rowe, right? Mike Rowe. He was great. We love Mike Rowe, right? Just, the Smartless. They went on the Smartless podcast. What? What? What's going on here? Okay. All right. So Mike Rowe says this, and I think this is, why I wrote the Bitcoiner's Guide to NPC Management, the Bitcoiner's Guide to the US 2024 elections. I think it's pretty interesting. So Mike Rowe says the following. Here's a theory I've come to accept as truth. He says, human beings often act against their own best interests because they misunderstand what most people around them actually believe. These misunderstandings are called collective illusions, and they can explain, among other things, why it feels like the country is divided on every single topic. But are we really? Collective illusions are driven by a conformity bias that leads us to assume there's consensus where there is none. This is why we hoard toilet paper, discriminate based on race, participate in cancel culture, allow men to compete against women in sporting events, and push our kids to pursue a 4-year degree, regardless of the cost, without even considering the many advantages of trade school. Most people, as it turns out, do not really support any of those things, but we hesitate to condemn them because the illusion of consensus feels very, very real. So a few points on this. So first of all, it's one of the reasons why I always explain that not having an embarrassment, like not being able to be embarrassed, is a big help to be a Bitcoiner. We are mocked every 4 years, just like we win every 4 years. We're mocked at some point in that 4-year cycle. We've been mocked from the beginning, right? When I gave up all of my old fiat world trappings of fancy office with a fireplace and a secretary and working in a prestigious place and all that kind of stuff, suits and blah, blah, blah. When I gave that up, my friends who I went to law school with thought I was crazy, and they laughed, right? Bitcoin was $200. They didn't even know what it was, right? They're all working at The Hague, some law firm here and there. This is 2014, 2015 times, right? And, they, of course, they laughed at me, right? I still have emails of them saying, oh, we don't take Bitcoin at this party, right? Ha, 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 ha. So they were laughing and laughing and laughing. So you have to kind of be okay with getting laughed at, just for your own personal fortitude, right? It's usually a social mechanism to influence people, to shame them into having this bias towards conformity, right? That embarrassment really is a major obstacle. Ego is a major obstacle towards this bias of conformity, right? It can either funnel you in or it can resist. Now, I'm not saying don't take feedback, right? That's not what I'm saying. If you do something silly and people laugh at you, you got to listen to it at least and consider. But when it came to Bitcoin anyway, it didn't matter what expert was telling me. I knew just from the front row seat I had in Canadian politics that we were not fixing it. It was not getting fixed. It was much deeper than policies and arguments didn't work. And I could perceive the architecture of deceit. I could perceive the brainwashing machine. I was close enough to it to understand exactly how the machine worked and exactly what it was doing to Canadians at the time. I understood as well that, the connection with America and that we were all being caught up in this collective illusion type of situation. So it was an important factor. So the other way of seeing this collective illusions is what we saw with COVID when we talked about the what did they call it again? The mass formation psychosis, right? Mass formation psychosis. Well, one thing I have learned from Scott Adams, and I think this is true, that mass formation psychosis is not the, it's not the, what do you call it? A little slow today, guys. The exception to the rule, right? Mass formation psychosis is not the exception to the rule. It's the operating system. We're always, everyone, under some form of mass formation psychosis. And it is kind of like this collective illusion thing, right? Because if you even, go to the end of this logic, everyone right now, all the Democrats out there think exactly as we Bitcoiners think, right? We think that we're stopping the world from evil. We have to do it. If we are not successful, everything's going to go to shit, right? Just like the Democrats believe the same thing, right? They actually believe that Trump is Hitler and they're saving the world from this and that and da-da-da. Now, how do you tell the difference? right? How do you know if you're on the good side? It's not, you can't really, right? You can do a few things to know who's got the worst case of confirmation bias, right? One of the ways you can tell is if someone hallucinates something, if someone has to invent something for their narrative to make sense, that's a pretty bad sign, right? That's a pretty bad sign that they're on the way, but we still don't know, right? You still don't know. You don't know because you can't predict. We don't have the ability to predict the future, which means we don't know if we're on the right path. It could be. I mean, there are non-zero chances that a Bitcoin standard is absolutely the worst thing for everyone in the world. There's a non-zero chance of that. You have to accept that, right? I accept it. Now, I still don't believe that's likely. I still believe it's within the risk management, the tolerance that we have. And it's much better, in my opinion, than what we have now, because what we have now looks really bad, right? But again, there is a form of confirmation bias baked into that. But the problem that I have is that when you start seeing these patterns and you start indeed having to hallucinate things in order to make them true, and you have to start inserting fake things in order for the narrative to hold together, you can be pretty sure that the fork and the psychological cleavage is, in a sense, coming to an end, because things are getting so far apart that, just like Abraham Lincoln said, right, a house divided cannot stand. And in this case, people spiraling this far out of control without really any consensus anymore between them is a recipe for a big change, either a psychological collapse on one end or a complete reforging of reality on the other, right? So that's the thing about this, Havana syndrome thing everyone's talking about. Have you seen this stupid story? It came on 60 Minutes last night, right? The laser beam that they shoot and then people get sick, right? So all over the 60 Minutes. This is what 60 Minutes said. For the first time, Greg Edgreen, who ran the Pentagon's investigation into mysterious neurological symptoms suffered by American officials known as Havana syndrome, speaks out publicly. He says top officials are being neutralized, right? Oh no, the Havana syndrome again, right? So here's what Cernovich has to say. And remember, we're talking now about the context is hallucinating, how to know if you're on the good side or not, like what's the best you can do, right? So here's what he says, right? He has a few quotes. This one's from 2021, where he was already calling it. Havana syndrome is wild. Basically, the deep state telling us that there are invisible ray guns being shot at them, making them sick. Yes, that's the substance of this illness. Anyway, it's far more likely they have leaky gut or brain fog from poor diet and no exercise, right? We got a few more of these. I want to read them just because they're great, right? So we also found out the names of the people that are doing this thing, right? The names of them. Let me make sure I got them here. I might not have copied the names. That's okay. I'll give you what I got. So he says Russiagate. So if you looked at the names, let's see if I do indeed have them. I thought I downloaded them. Anyway, all of the people have some Russiagate association, right? All of them. All the people yesterday on the 60 Minutes show had a connection to Russiagate and everything that Trump went through with the Steele dossier, right? So here's what he says again, right? Russiagate hoaxers claim Russia has a ray gun, which has been used in American intelligence community reasons, quad-boosted COVIDians. So now we're supposed to listen to the quad-boosted COVIDians, because it's true, if they're still in an intelligence department, to keep their security access and all that stuff, they had to get multiple jabs, right? That's what I remember. Maybe they didn't, but still, there are those people who told us to, right? For some reason has not used, and they're wondering why the Russians haven't used the Havana syndrome gun on Zelensky, right? So Mike Benz says, indeed, the problem with Havana syndrome is, in addition to sounding like bullshit on its face, every single here's what I wanted. Yeah. Every single person involved in it is a professional liar. The moment I saw Mark Polymeropoulos saying he had it after drinking one night, I said, nope, that's a no snowball's chance in hell. Blob media, right? Oh yeah, here it is. It's right here. How come I not find this? Hans Monkey says, there are stellar officers who claim to have Havana syndrome. Mark, that guy, claimed Hunter Biden's laptop was a Russian plot. He was one of the 51 signatories. Miles Taylor, anonymous, right? So we don't know him. Olivia Troy, Trump-hating Pence advisor. Mark Lindsay, guy who got Twitter to ban his critics, right? So these are the people telling you the Havana syndrome gun is real, right? So Now, here's the problem, though. And here's why it's important for Bitcoiners to understand hallucinating and really what our main obstacle is to reconciling this, divided mental space. And it comes from RFK again, right? It comes from RFK. So what does RFK say? He says he says the following: economic data looks rosy. So why are people complaining? Maybe it's because the data is being manipulated. Consider this. BLS household survey shows 5 million fewer employed workers than in its payroll survey. The Philadelphia Fed just admitted payrolls overstated by 800,000 people. The much trumpeted job growth in the last year was entirely part-time jobs. And then he says, messing with the data for political advantages will stop under my administration. So it's not just the manipulation of data. It's not just that. It's the entire architecture of the data. It's the centralized systems. It's that we still live in a society where you can get 4 experts to go on a show like 60 Minutes, centralized media, and give you their prescribed talking points, right? It's exactly what Mark Andreessen said this weekend. Mark Andreessen this weekend said, if you replace experts with mentally ill or something along those lines, in every newspaper article, it will still read the same, right? If you just said mentally ill people say, right? Mentally ill people say, instead of experts, the whole thing would make sense. The world would make sense, he said, right? And it's totally true, right? Bitcoin Graffiti, oh dude, they went to standard time in New Zealand or Netherlands. Yeah, sorry about that, my man. We got to get rid of all this time. They can't even sync globally. No, but hold on. If the polar ice caps keep spinning, remember it's messing with time itself. So we might all get synced up here. If it stays maybe warm on the bottom of the Earth and hot on the top, and it starts corkscrewing it a bit, right? We might actually change the time zones. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. So indeed, everything is about these centralized, this architecture of deceit, this machinery that is designed to persuade people in ways that would serve their interests, not necessarily your best interests. Back to what Mike Rowe was saying about voting for things that are not in your best interest, voting for things that are, going to hurt you, right? Exactly what he said. It's the collective illusion of consensus. But the good news is, and Balaji has it here, is that, and going back to what RFK said, and something I've mentioned many times here, and I'll repeat it again, right? The only data that is able to be used to persuade me, the only data that I have any confidence in. So anyone who uses data to get me to change my mind about something, right away I said, no, I don't know where the data is coming from. The data is useless, right? It's absolutely useless. There is no data worth a damn in the world anymore. You know, this one on this thing that the global warming people could judge the temperatures around the world, like they're capable, like human beings are capable. They're capable of finding the temperatures at different spots in the world every day for 100 years. Are you kidding me? I don't think we could do it in this yacht club. I don't think it would be possible here. The temperatures have faults within them, right? So there's about a 0.1 degree variability in the actual devices. There's a 0.1 degree variability in humans' ability to read the devices, right? It's just not possible. And then what do we have? Floating ones up in the atmosphere all around the world? Nothing like that ever happened. Humans are completely incapable of judging the temperature on Earth, right? And measuring it. It's never happened once. It will never happen. It's not possible. We're not capable. Okay? We couldn't do it in America. There's no way it's being done in the world. And America is by far the best with temperature gauges. And we have the best data there is, right? And it's still garbage. It's garbage. And if you look at that data, as far as I understand, there is no temperature change if you look at it in America, right? But here's what Balaji says about all the centralized data, the manipulation of data, how it's manipulated, why it's manipulated, and everything we've built until now, right? He says the internet is the next America. The internet. So I'll even give you one way of framing this, because this is what Bitcoiners have been saying for a long time. So what Bitcoiners, and it's the first line of my book, The Bitcoiner's Guide to the US 2024 Elections, that the 2008 financial crisis and the invention of Bitcoin at the same time set Bitcoin and the nation state on a collision course. Now, again, I've said it before, but the reason why Satoshi Nakamoto, in my opinion, chose the Japanese pseudonym was to have the kind of moral authority or the experience to say to America and the architects of the US dollar that what we experienced in Japan with the lost decade, with our inability to use the levers of monetary policy anymore in any meaningful sense, that is coming to America. As a Japanese person, Satoshi Nakamoto, I am telling you, America, it's game over. So the necessary result of not Bitcoin, had those conditions played out, would be indeed the Ray Dalio thesis of China supplanting America as the new nation state and creator of the money that the world uses. So the only way to really protect America after the 2008 meltdown, and we couldn't use financial sanctions the way we did before, we couldn't use the Teddy Roosevelt speak quietly, carry a big stick, we had to flip it around, right? We had to speak loudly, and we don't have a stick anymore. Right, it's done. We can't stop anyone. If you look at what's going on in the Red Sea now, Russia is sending its navy there because we abandoned it. We can't even deal with pirates in America. Like, pirates will run away from pirates now, right? So the stick is broken. We can't do that, right? It was the famous Teddy Roosevelt quote, right? Speak quietly and carry a big stick. He did that about he came up with the whole scheme when America took over and created the state of Panama. Panama was never a thing. It was just part of Colombia. And America under Teddy Roosevelt, got a little fight going in Colombia so that it separated and Panama was created, and America instantly recognized it, instantly took over and built their canal, right? Which is, I'm not judging it. I don't know if it was a bad decision necessarily. It looks like overall a good decision. We needed the Panama Canal, and it did a lot of good for the world. And there you go. And America did give it back eventually to this fake country they created called Panama. But here's what we got, right? So had America not done, going back to the COVID thing, had there not been something like Bitcoin, we would be on a one-way ticket to Chinese money and the Chinese system spreading globally. Not even necessarily because the Chinese were imperial, because we would choose that situation, right? Here's what he says. So everything he's saying here is something that Bitcoiners, as far as I can tell, myself included, have been thinking about for over 10 years now, right? The internet is the next America. The internet is to America what America was to Britain, a frontier territory that will ultimately succeed even its worthy progenitor. The early Americans thought of themselves as British for decades. They had land and people, but not a government, until national consciousness arose. Fundamentally, Americans were more connected to each other than they were to random fellow Britons. They chatted with their fellow neighbors next door, not to the people thousands of miles away. Eventually, they decided to get their own state or states, because the Americas gave birth to more than just America, and many other subjects of London's hegemony also sought independent states over time. This is a very interesting connection he does here too. Importantly, the leaders of these newly independent states, like George Washington, who used to live across the street, Lee Kuan Yew, that's the Singapore leader, and Gandhi. Isn't that a neat thought that the people who rejected British statehood are Washington, Lee Kuan Yew, and Gandhi? Like, isn't that neat? I think that's pretty neat. Weren't really anti-British. They were post-British. Washington respected Britain, but thought that its people could do better without London. And he was right. Today, most countries that declared independence from the UK are on good terms with the British. The early netizens, this is the next chapter, or next part of his post. Similarly, many early netizens still think of themselves as Americans. Today, they have people in government, but not land, until network consciousness arrives. Fundamentally, netizens are more connected to each other than they are to random fellow citizens. They video chat with people thousands of miles away, like we're doing here, right? And don't know their next door neighbor. I know my next door neighbor. Eventually, they will get their own state or states, because the internet will give birth to more than just the next America. And many other subjects of DC's hegemony will also seek independent states over time. Importantly, leaders of these newly independent states aren't anti-American. They are post-American, just like Lee Kuan Yew, Gandhi, and George Washington. They love what America was, but think their people can do better without today's DC, and they will be right. Transfer of sovereignty. The sun did set on the British Empire, like the Romans and Greeks before them. Then DC took the torch from London, and now the internet is taking the torch from DC. We already see the transfer of sovereignty from land to cloud. The US post office has been replaced by email. Taxi medallions were obviated by Uber. NASA is outcompeted by SpaceX, and the dollar is devalued against Bitcoin. This will extend to everything. 99% of transactions and communications have already moved online. So will 99% of regulations and legislations. So will elections, and so will the state itself, reborn on the internet frontier. This is exciting. It's not just a frontier that's back. So are the pioneers, the captains of industry, the next founders. As Joe Biden falls, 1,000 George Washingtons rise. So don't blackpill. Yes, DC's century is ending, like London's did, but the internet century is just beginning. And what are the governments of the internet? And he says blockchains, actually. They provide property rights, smart contract enforcement, dispute resolution, identity verification, and more to hundreds of millions of people online. Just like you can store your money in a Swiss bank account, you can store your money in Satoshi's blockchain. Fundamentally, blockchains are new systems of digital law that people opt into because they are superior to legacy states. Yes, today they only enforce laws online, but that will change, right? So indeed, when we think about the fracturing nature and going back to what we said before about this illusion of consensus, well, again, the only data point worth anything is Bitcoiner consensus about what happened when on the Bitcoin blockchain, which means it's the only data point worth a damn left on Earth, right? So contrast that, and then contrast what happens with our communities coming together like we do here in the morning, like Bitcoiners do at events. You can get your promo codes to Bitcoin Hong Kong and Bitcoin Nashville this summer in the description below. It is promo code Space Drop. Do not confuse it with an airdrop. We're not doing airdrops, only space drops on our show. Totally different concept, not even close to related, but you can get yours there, right? So the data point being that, and Bitcoiners' ability to propagate within this community, and what it means for this cleavage and what it means for forking humanity. Now, I used to think we could save everyone, right? But COVID showed me humanity is forked. I wish it weren't so, but it's so, right? And it looks like our path is clearer than ever, that those folks who don't want to live in hallucinations, who don't want to live in a world where they have to say, Joe Biden is so smart, right? Now, remember what an advantage it is that every day the people that are trying to push this American system have to go out, this DC, USA, Inc. system. They now have to go out like, I mean, how dumb did Obama look? How stupid? How dumb did he look on stage with Joe Biden? How stupid, right? It's contagious. Joe Biden's mental illness is contagious. And it's contagious to the Janet Yellens and everybody else who goes around there and saying, oh, they're doing great. They're doing great. Everyone who says that discredits themselves to such an extent that they could probably never earn it back. Now, the people who are stuck within that consensus of illusion and centralized media and those kinds of things will have no choice but to continue to see it that way. But more and more people are exiting, and you don't go back. It's not one of these things. How many people, when America was created, do you know the story of the what were they called again? They were the Hessian troops that the British hired, right? So remember, Germany is not like an old country or anything, right? Anyone who tells you Germany is an old country, Canada is the same age, right? It's from the 1860s. So Germany was created out of a bunch of states, small states, that were all principalities, some better than others, but there was no nation. There was people who spoke a language. The language existed, the ethnicity existed, but there was no nation state. It was just all these principalities and all these things. So some of them, especially one of them that's connected to all of these Rothschilds and all of these people, Bismarck, of course, yeah. What they did was they sold their soldiers as mercenary armies, right? So the Germans rented a mercenary army and it wasn't German, but it was whatever state it was, the Hessians, rented their army to the British to go fight Americans. So they landed in Long Island, right? So the Hessians landed in Long Island, and they get there, and then they look around at the houses and the buildings, right? And they say, wait a minute. These people are rich, and these are just average people. And they were walking around Long Island, and they saw the houses, they saw the farms, they saw how people were living, and they quit being a mercenary on the spot and just joined America. They're like, why won't I get the free stuff? Why won't I get the good land? I don't want to do anything like go back to Germany now. And what? You know how hard it was to even get married in Germany? Now, the German system worked for them. It was severe. The way it worked was primogeniture, firstborn son gets everything, master and apprentice system. If your family were shoemakers, you were a shoemaker, and you had to be a good one, because if you weren't the best, you didn't inherit the shoe store that your dad had. And then, so there was a real attention on being the best, and it worked. That's why you have beautiful buildings and beautiful stuff, and it's a great place. But the system in the end was very severe and cruel to other people, and they had to move, they had to leave. You had a diaspora of Germans. That's why Germans are the largest source country of America. Did you know that? It's not English. America, if you do the genetic background, the number one source in America is German, right? The German people. We've seen it before. We've had many of these people around that have been hugely influential, from Chicago all the way down to Texas. Texas is really German, right? Really German. And so the people who were leaving these failed states. No one went back. Nobody ever went back. Right? No one went back. They were like, well, why would we do that? And in the same way, you aren't going to see people go back, right? When they lose the way they're losing, there's no way to go back, which is why every person that goes into Bitcoin doesn't go back and say, well, I want fiat money, and what did the news say? So this is a one-way street, right? This is entropy on the old system and exuberance and energy going to the new system. And you can see it, right? You can see it. Yeah. And even the idea of Pennsylvania Dutch in America, that's not true. They were not Dutch. That's a mispronunciation. They're Pennsylvania Deutsch. There's no Dutch small. Like a few, they stuck to the coast and beat it. They weren't into like making huge population centers. They were Pennsylvania Deutsch, not Dutch. There's no such thing. It's Pennsylvania Deutsch, German, 100%, right? So, and they were a big change in the war, because they came. The Germans had better gun technology. The long rifles, they had learned how to carve or smith or mill, or I don't know how they did it. Basically, conicular grooves into the gun barrel, and that greatly increased the accuracy of these firearms. So they were able to line up for the Revolutionary War way past the British, and would have zero casualties. They just picked them off, right? Because their guns were much better. And so this was a huge win for America, that these Germans started coming to the American side. But indeed, now World War III is not about guns and some drones that's around, right? But really, this cleavage that we, no, New York City was New Netherlands. If you go up if you go up the river, the Hudson River, you get to Rhinebeck, you get to all these German towns, right? So, and indeed, that's the Lake Champlain and the Hudson River as it comes down to New York, that separates Vermont, my state, from New York, is the actual border between New England and whatever else was going on, right? So all of these towns. Now, there definitely were Dutch people. I don't want to make it sound like the Dutch were great explorers. The Germans were coming on Dutch boats. The Germans were not building boats, right? The Dutch had a lot to do, and there were definitely Dutch around, right? There were definitely Dutch around, but it wasn't to the same extent that the Germans. There's just more German people, and life in Germany sucked so bad, depending on the state you were in, that they wanted the hell out. Like, you couldn't get married, you couldn't have land, right? They had a lot of problems. So that's the reason why you got so many Germans coming to, but there was no nation state at the time. So what did you call them, right? You didn't call them by their thing. They spoke German, they spoke Deutsch, and that's how it went. So again, Bitcoin Graffiti, I don't know the exact details of how many Dutch came, where they came exactly, but my understanding is stuck to the coast, got booted out of Amsterdam, and moved on, right? They were already dealing with Japan, and they had Brazil. There was other stuff going on, but they weren't like inland people. The Germans went straight away inland. Yeah, here come the Hessians. And Hessians, definitely German, I think, right? So, again, go back to this idea of hallucinating and energy and where you get your information sources, and World War III not being about the bullets and the smithing of guns anymore for your accuracy. It really is about a psychological warfare, psychological battlefield, and an economic battlefield, and the relationship between those two, which is why Bitcoin is the main weapon in World War III. It is at once a way to understand psychological manipulation, understand the vitality of psychology to an economy. A good psychology leads to much better economic outcomes for everybody. And so the relationship there is something Bitcoiners understand, because we're not running on fiat information sources anymore. We have respect for the world that was created, and that's why I always tell you guys, and I always say it, what the fiat thing was at the start, and I'm glad Saifedean was able to put that in his book, The Fiat Standard. You got to respect what they did. The invention of fiat money was something else. It really was a great thing at first, and it created a lot of economic benefit for everyone in the world. But all systems that are made by human beings, written on paper, are so complicated, rely on experts, rely on third-party intermediaries, rely on media to propagate itself. All of that is so open to entropy that it can't persist forever. And now what we have is a system completely turned on itself, which is just making everyone depressed, poor, stupid, all that stuff. So we're in the middle of this breaking, and indeed the happiness and ability the Bitcoiners have to laugh at clown world, to laugh at what's going on, is really one of our main advantages, right? To laugh at the data, to laugh at these people when they say, oh, the world, like, just think of this. Polar ice melt is changing Earth's rotation, messing with time itself. Like, what you're dealing with low IQ people from the public education system that don't even understand time, and you're running headlines about global warming fucking up time. I mean, it's beyond parody. It's beyond parody, right? You have to laugh at it. So, what's Jeremy saying? It's funny, we still don't have recognition by the UN yet. This future will probably be happening this year. That's probably what the block count transition is about. Yeah, end of World War III. We're ending it, guys. We're ending it. We're ending it. We are a nation of broken people. Well, not the Bitcoiners. That's not my nation, CB. You know what I mean? I'm not. I bowed out of American citizenship. Don't want it. Right? Not interested. Not interested. Absolutely not interested. Hessians are Austrian by geographic region. Yeah, maybe. Traded it for Suriname. One-way exit valve for value. That's wildly optimistic. Eucatastrophic. Yeah, that's one of my favorite words. You know what a eucatastrophe is, everyone? It's the opposite of a catastrophe. It's a great catastrophe. It's like a great thing that happens. And Bitcoin is a eucatastrophe, right? Mm-hmm. All right. Southern Indiana. It goes from, the German thing goes from the beer of the Budweisers and Chicago. It's still indeed less in the New York area, but once you get to Ohio, and Chicago is a German town, like that's the hot dogs and the beer, and it was totally made by Germans. And so you go down from there, and St. Louis, in particular Texas, right? There's a writer named James Michener who does these historic novels that are a bit history, a bit like what Shogun did, right? Made up stories, but that fit the truth of the story close enough. So he did one called The Source, which is all about Israel and everything that went on there. He's got all kinds of them, every part of the world. But his one on Texas, I read the one on Texas. I didn't know about the actual amount of German influence making stuff down there. The Spanish hadn't been able to really manipulate it the way the Germans could. They made log cabins, and then Spindletop, of course, right? The oil drilling, that's all Germans, right? So there you go. All right. Albany was Dutch. I see all Dutch names on maps. Yeah, I'm wrong then. They went up the river, but I agree with you that it was contained within that. Yeah. Okay, that's what I mean then. Yeah. Rhinebeck would be German, though. I don't think Rhinebeck is Dutch, is it? Yeah, there was definitely a part of America that was Dutch, no doubt about it. But Dutch aren't big colonizers, right? They weren't, trading posts, yeah. The Germans needed to get the fuck out. So just like Bitcoiners these days, some people just got to go, right? Things get too crazy and you got to go. So, yeah. Dutch, okay, yeah. Rhinebeck, I always thought. Anyway, that's sort of the most famous and beautiful town up there. Rhinebeck. Very, very beautiful place. I mean, just amazing, right? I love that whole drive coming down. I do it on either side of the river. I'm a big fan of it. Yeah. Oh, wow. 3.0, but you can't even feel a 3.0. The most I've ever felt is a 6. Big enough. We got the Rhine too. That's true. You do. Yeah. Of course you do. Yeah, a little bit of it, huh? Yeah. Just that little clip. Yeah. All that swamp north of where the German border is. That's part of the world I don't know much about, actually, even though my father is from not far from there. My father was born in a Dutch town that was a Dutch town that was made by the Dutch, but in Denmark, called Friedestad. And it's right on the Danish border with Germany, up in that top part. But the whole town is Dutch. Like the buildings are all Dutch, made by Dutch people. The same time they made America, that's where they went to get safety. Now, my family really comes from the Black Forest. It was just where my father was born because of all this trouble that was going on. So, yeah. All right, team. It's still a holiday here in Barbados, so it's a little loud around here. I'm going to cut it short today. You know, lots of kids around and stuff. It's in Barbados, they take their Easter very seriously. So Friday and Monday are holidays. And it had no trans anything here. Don't get mad at that, by the way. That's I know a lot of people in America were offended over the weekend about the trans day of visibility. But again, this is the information sources argument, right? We're in a psychological and economic war. If you're spending your holiday weekend upset of something stupid Joe Biden said, Joe Biden, everything that comes out of his mouth is retarded. Everything. You don't have to get upset about him. Like, just, you have to ignore it. You can't. The best solution is to just come here and I'll filter the fake news out, right? And then you're not going to have to hear it. And you just get to laugh at it, 1 degree of proxy. But stay away from any anger. But I understand a lot of people were insulted. It's so triggering, but it's not going to get you anywhere, right? To win this war, we literally have to laugh at them and not let them get us angry. The minute we get angry, we're toast. We're toasts, right? Because remember, like the very end of my book talks about how if we don't, right, if we don't figure out how to if we don't figure out psychologically how to insulate us from this type of prompt engineering, because that's what's being done. It's a type of prompt engineering. And I use a line: the day is late and the dollar is short. Their attention is coming to us next. It is. We're going to be the Nazis. They're going to, I'm telling you, they're going to do fake research on Satoshi Nakamoto. They're going to find out that it was a Nazi plot, and that'll be it. Like that. It's, if we're not strong enough and we fall for this, we're going to be toast. So we can't do it, right? Yeah. You're gaslit, man. That's it. But remember, your anger will absolutely be met with more anger, right? There's just no way around it, right? It's one of the things you got to understand in life, that whatever energy you're putting out there is absolutely what you're going to get back. I mean, you have the ability to control the people around you, and you do that by controlling yourself. And that's the trick, right? It's the reason why I make sure my kids do a lot of stuff with horses, right? Riding horses, being around horses, especially for women, right? One of the best ways women can understand exactly how powerful they are, not by watching these disgusting beating up men on movie fake news. If you put your mind to it, you can beat up a man type propaganda, right? That's very stupid. It'll never work, right? It's just reality. But when they learn how to ride horses and be around horses, they understand how to control an animal that's much stronger than them, And once they get that, once they see that control has nothing to do with strength at all, they're able to apply that to the real world. So if you have young daughters out there, I'll always recommend horseback riding for that reason. They're not going to be afraid of no man, but for the right reasons. And they'll understand how to control a man in a way that's probably beneficial for them and for everyone else, right? So there you go. Veterans talking about the false flag on April 8th. Cover for what is coming next in the world war, asymmetrical tax. I hope not, but horses for the ladies, y'all. Yeah. Bitcoin graffiti. Whoops, I missed that one. Poisonous words. People do throw up words, right? May they feel better after the happening. Yeah, so that's why, guys, they're going to gaslight the shit out of us this year, and it's going to be Nazi stuff. Luckily, we got old Larry Fink on the job. He's out there pushing Bitcoin all day, so they're going to have to call him one too. It's too late. They lost, guys. They lost. Thanks for the wisdom. Love you. Bitcoin, rate guy, boat guy, and bliss and horse logos. Yeah, we love it. Bitcoin graffiti. All right, everyone. Peace. Take it easy. I'll see y'all tomorrow.